Welcome. Today, we're getting into a topic that can feel like, well, walking on eggshells: faith and suffering. We're going to break down a framework that's not about winning arguments, but about actually building bridges of understanding. And it all comes down to humility and respect.
So let's just dive right in. Have you ever tried to talk about faith with someone? You know how quickly a simple chat can just explode into a full-on conflict? It's kind of strange, right? A topic that's supposed to be about connections so often just creates division. What is up with that?
To get through this tricky territory, our source material says we first need to kind of map out the battlefield. It's about figuring out not just who you're talking to, but also who this kind of conversation is really meant for in the first place.
So our source breaks it down into three basic mindsets. You've got the firm believer. They're all in. Then you have the firm non-believer who's like, nope, not for me. And then there's that third person, the one this whole approach is really designed for, the undecided. This is for the person who's still curious, still asking questions, the one whose heart is still open.
Okay, so before we jump into the how-to of these conversations, let's take a second to understand the why behind a believer's point of view. The foundation we're talking about here isn't built on some kind of rigid scientific proof. Instead, it's based on a series of observations about the world we all live in.
Now, this is a really fascinating place to start. The speaker, Cliffe Knechtle, he just comes right out and says it. I can't prove that God exists. He actually compares it to trying to prove you're not in a dream right now. It's impossible. So the point isn't about absolute mathematical proof. It's about weighing what he calls the overwhelming evidence. So, what is that evidence?
Well, the first piece of evidence is everything, the universe itself. The argument is pretty straightforward. When you look at the incredible order of a galaxy or the mind-boggling complexity in a single strand of your DNA, it looks designed. It points to an intelligent designer, not just random chaos.
The second piece of evidence is something that's inside all of us, that universal human need for meaning. Why do we all look for purpose in our lives? The source suggests this deep longing isn't just some random fluke. It's a clue that we were actually created for a purpose, not just the result of a cosmic accident. And the third piece of evidence? It's love. Think about it. That profound, powerful, life-changing experience of love, can you really boil that down to just a bunch of chemicals firing off in your brain? The argument here is that it points to something more, a spiritual side to us, and a creator who literally designed us to love and be loved.
So, with that foundation in place, how do we actually talk about all this stuff? How do we build a bridge to someone instead of just putting up another wall? Let's get into what makes for a humble and productive dialogue.
And right here, this is the absolute key. Our source shares this great story about the ancient theologian Augustine. Somebody asked him what the three most important Christian virtues were. His answer was so simple but so deep. The first is humility, the second is humility, and the third is humility. So this isn't just some nice-to-have personality trait. It's the bedrock, the essential ingredient for any real connecting conversation.
So, how do we actually do that? How do we put humility into action? This slide gives us a fantastic four-step playbook. First, just be real about your own flaws. Be vulnerable. Second, change your goal. It's not about winning, it's about understanding. The source suggests prayer is a great way to kind of center yourself on that goal. Third, respect their journey. You have to acknowledge that everyone's on their own unique path. And last, and maybe most important, listen more than you talk. Try to understand where they're coming from, their heart, not just their talking points.
The contrast here is just night and day, isn't it? Pride pushes us apart. It makes us compete. It makes us obsessed with being right, and it just creates distance. Humility, on the other hand, is all about connection. It's what lets us find our way back to each other and puts the relationship ahead of the argument.
Okay, so let's put this whole framework to the test. How does this humility thing actually work when you get hit with some of the toughest, most painful questions about faith? Let's see how it applies when the stakes are high and emotions are running hot.
This is a big one. It's a question that goes right to the heart of what's fair. How can a system be just if your eternal destiny depends on where you happen to be born? What about the person who never even gets a chance to hear about a certain faith? It's a really important and really sensitive question.
The principle our source offers is this: you're judged by the light you're given. Think of it like a test in school. A good teacher isn't going to test you on chapters they never told you to read, right? In the same way, the idea here is that a just God judges people based on how they responded to the truth that was available to them, whether that's through nature or their own conscience or whatever they were taught. not on information they never had access to.
And here's another classic that a ton of people struggle with. Why does it seem like the bad guys always win? We see it all the time, right? Corrupt people get rich, and honest, hard-working people just can't seem to catch a break. How is that possibly fair?
So the source for this one, it completely reframes the question. First, it just states a hard truth. Life isn't fair. But second, and this is the game changer, it argues that being wealthy is not a sign that God likes you more. Instead, the focus shifts away from questioning God and onto our own human responsibility. The point is that believers are told to be radically generous, to use what they have to help people who are in need. So in this view, the real measure of a person isn't what's in their bank account, it's what's in their heart. And all of this is building toward a really powerful idea about what the goal of these conversations even is. And spoiler alert, it's probably not what you think.
This personal story from George Janko just brings it all home. He talks about how he realized that his constant arguments with his mom were pushing his dad away from him. And he says, "I humbled myself, and then he, my father, drew near me. It's the best thing I could ask for." See, the prize for his humility wasn't winning the argument. It was winning back his dad. And that just highlights the biggest takeaway here. This whole thing isn't about performance. It's not a checklist of things you have to do or a scoreboard of arguments you've won. According to this view, the entire point is having a real, living relationship.
This idea gets driven home by a really powerful quote from the Bible. Jesus describes this scene where people come up to him and list all the amazing things they did. They even performed miracles, but his response to them is, "I never knew you." It's a shocking thing to say, and it really hammers home the point. A genuine, humble connection is worth way more than an impressive resume of being right.
And that leads us to our final thought. In any of our difficult conversations, whether they're about faith or politics or anything else we care about, what if we just change the goal? What would happen if our goal wasn't to be right, but simply to reconnect?